so excited to talk to you and just, hang out for a little bit. So just a little bit about you, born in Canada. Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny how Americans say born in Canada. It's like saying, you were born in the United States, right? Americans never say that. They never say, oh, I was born in the United States. They say I was born in Cleveland or something.
Right.
But yes, I was born in Canada, which is, huge country. But I was, Winnipeg, Vancouver, and then Toronto. I wasn't born in all three places, but I lived in all
one of them. Okay. Do you go back a lot?
I used to go back more, but yeah, I go back as often as I can.
Yeah. And okay, so you've done a million things. You've done kind of so many things. Right now, the thing that kind of is your, kind of main cool, wonderful thing is Henry Danger, that you've been on since 2014. Yes.
It spun off into Danger Force. So Henry Danger ended 2019, I guess, and then created a new series was created as a spinoff called Danger Force.
And so wow. And you pronounce the name for me, Schwartz. Yeah. Yeah. How fun is that?
It is fun. It's like a playground, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I remember my most biggest claim to fame was doing these 3 Disney movies where do you get mobbed? I got mobbed at a girl's volleyball. It was just, you have no clue the kind of reach that those series have,
Well, the demographic might be a little younger on the show than maybe what you were used to, because the kids, when they see someone that they recognize on a show, they don't do what adults do, which is come up to you and go, oh my gosh, I saw you in this and blah, 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 right? They don't do that. They do this. They're like, sit there and they stare, and then they might like hit their parent and go, hey, I think that's whatever. And the parent always goes, no, it's not. And then, and the kid, you can see like the wheels turning, and then, 10 years of therapy needed to happen after that, because like the reality is they're completely like doubted, when they were right all along. Yes, that is me. So, but I see that a lot. But since COVID, I'm wearing a mask and nobody ever knows who I am. So that's been different.
Right. Wow. Are you guys still messed up out there? I'm in Cleveland, actually, weirdly.
Are you seriously in Cleveland?
I'm seriously in Cleveland.
I just said that. That was
I know.
Well, that's so random. Wow.
Yes,
I can't. Well, hot in Cleveland.
Here, that's me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, I'm in LA.
Yeah. So one of the things that I wanted to talk to you about specifically is I started this nonprofit, True Beauty Discovery, to kind of disrupt beauty norms and kind of what women and girls are kind of presented with, and that sort of thing. And when I first began it, I kind of began this journey at being an actor and being always aware of what it was about and how I looked and what that whole thing, which really it's hard and it distracts you from your artistry and what you're really purely doing. So the whole concept and the whole thought of gender and gender roles and all those boundaries is really interesting to me. And it's something that I want my, True Beauty Discovery to address and include and things like that. So one of the things that you did in 2019 was you made public that you transitioned you transitioned, you're a man. And it was something, from what I've read, that was really important to you because of the state of the world. It's okay. I got one over here.
He has something to say about this.
Oh.
Yeah.
The state of the world and what's up with where we are with that. It's curious to me. And what are your thoughts about like gender roles and broadly speaking, how do you feel about that? And how do you feel about what's going on? We've kind of stepped back a lot in these past few years, but in terms of gender roles and where we're going, can you?
Oh, I could talk for hours on this. How long do you have? I I think that what I think the first thing to do is to clarify definitions. I'm a real stickler for language because I think that language really informs our understanding of the world. And when we use terms that we think we understand, but we haven't really questioned, it can really skew our understanding. So for example, I really love how you said that I did the Time article and that I had disclosed that I transitioned. I didn't disclose that I'm transgender. I disclosed that I transitioned because I don't define myself as transgender. I don't identify myself that way. I identify as a man.
Right.
And that I have a trans experience. So it's my experience that's trans, not me.
Right.
So I have always been male, right? That's how I've always felt. That's how I did. That feels like truth, like that capital T resonance that's undisputable, non-negotiable, right? No matter what anybody tells me or tries to make me into, or what I try to make myself into, that truth is there. And I think that beauty and truth are in some ways very synonymous. And you've probably covered that a million times in these interviews with people, but that when you can resonate with your own personal truth, that inherently there's an experience. See, they agree too. Right? Our dogs are like really into talking about this.
They're very.
So I think that, from my experience in my life and experiencing that level of truth that is so personal and so I transitioned 22 years ago, right? I grew up in a time where nobody knew what this was. And I had to arrive at this truth with no role models and no example, especially for men. Nobody ever heard of men, we've seen women on Jerry Springer, but we haven't seen men, generally speaking. And so by finding that truth, regardless of any external stimulation, despite not having any of that, and finding that in myself and then experiencing what that felt like when I was able to embrace it, is an experience of beauty. And nobody really talks about that, and that's what I'm aiming to do in my writing and performance and things that projects I'm developing, is to talk about the trans experience through a very different lens than what we're used to. One that's I hope and I think is universal. It just happens to be that we could talk about it in almost any avenue but that's my avenue. And so I say I'm of trans experience. I don't say I'm trans or transgender because it doesn't feel truthful to me.
Right.
Why would I go from one label that didn't fit into another label that didn't fit? I'm trying to find languaging that is more and more precise, that I can convey who I am and what I'm about. So back to your original question about gender roles. I feel a need to define what that means, because I think that people mix up gender and gender roles and gender expression and all those things, right? So I define gender, and I've never heard anybody else define it this way, but it makes sense to me, which I define gender as the need to express a particular formula of masculine and feminine energy that is unique to you. So it's about energy and the expression of that energy. And that is non-negotiable. We're born with that. We're born with our, people call it sexual orientation. I like to call it romantic orientation. People are born with certain things, that are just part of who you are, that is just part of your hardwiring. And so gender identity is that you're born with it. And even if your gender identity, even if you're fluid, even if you're non-binary, if you're gender queer, you're gender fluid, whatever, those things you're born with. It's not like you just decide to be that. It is who you are. So that's gender identity. Gender roles is a really different thing. That's environmental, right? And but in some ways, but in other ways, our need to express a particular mix of our own personal formula of feminine energy or masculine energy, right, gets translated into gender roles. So oftentimes, you'll find someone who, let's say, we'll look at a very binary male, okay? Someone who's really like masculine energy, they have feminine energy, everybody has a mix, but their masculine energy really is dominant, right? And so their gender roles may reflect that. They might be like, I'm going to go out and chop the wood. I'm going to be fixing the car. I'm going to be, very protective. I'm going to be like, whatever the traditional gender roles might be, those happen to be, there is some truth to them. They can be in alignment with masculine energy. Same with feminine energy, right? But there can also be like examples where it's the unexpected, where someone feels, they express masculine energy by cooking, that's their way of that's how they express their manhood. So those are gender roles. So I think it's just such a personalized thing. It's so personal. I think what's gotten screwed up is our expectations of what they be.
Mhm.
And so I guess I just think it's important that we all go inside and ask ourselves, what is true for me? How do I really feel like a man, or how do I feel like a woman, or how do I feel like, a mix of, if you're non-binary, some sort of mix, what, and those roles are very fluid. They can be fluid. There's times where I'm very domestic, and there's times where I'm just out there and wanting to, so it's just, it's I think that giving ourselves the freedom to express those things is what's important. Gender roles seem so fixed. They seem so cognitive. They seem so laden with expectation, right? And yet there can be some truth to them. So it's a bit of a paradox. And
Do you think it should, in other words, do you think, because of the fact that things are so different right now, and kind of, but and yet I feel like we've been stuck in these particular roles as well. So do you see a shift? Do you see
I do.
more acceptance, more,
I think it's because of that shift in acceptance that we're seeing so much backlash,
right.
Because it's threatening. But you've got guys wearing nail polish now. When did we ever think that was going to happen, right? We've got, like, I think that there's a lot more, especially with Gen Z, there's just a lot more fluidity when it comes to gender. There's, when my ex's teenage kids came home from school and they talked about, like, this was years ago. This was like, I don't know, maybe five, not even that long ago, 4 or 5 years ago. And they're like, oh yeah, we have this non-binary kid in our class. I'm like, wait, what did you just say, non-binary? Like, to me, that was such a niche term. That was marginalized language. That was not something that was in the mainstream. And then I'm like, wait, what's going on? And I realized that this, gender identity has taken on such a broad spectrum and acceptance into the mainstream with younger people. And that's unheard of. And so that, I think, is threatening to a certain population. And so we see more backlash that makes it look like we've taken a million steps backwards.
Right.
And in some ways we have, because trans kids right now are under incredible oppression in some states. Their rights are being taken away from them. Their access to medical care has been taken away from them. People who help them have been, the laws have changed in some places where it's illegal to help these kids. So there's what I call
How can that be, Michael?
Exactly. It's horrific. It's based on complete lies and misinformation. It's not based on anything scientific, nothing medical, nothing. They're not consulting experts. They're handpicking experts that will give them evidence in the direction they want, rather than really looking at the truth and the reality and statistics. So they're doing that because they're scared and because they're using it as political leverage. So these kids are being used as pawns, and it is horrific. And I see it as a kind of a passive genocide. They're basically trying to annihilate a population. And so it's something that I'm very passionate about, as you can tell, and very emotional about. But I think that it is the result of what we're seeing in terms of more acceptance and more understanding in a different level. And that's why the backlash.
In terms, like, moving forward and becoming more aware or cognizant, any thoughts about that, or any ideas about making that happen, or, kind of what can people do to just, I mean, I try to do my little part of just awareness and making the world a little bit of a better place by, helping to empower these young people. But in terms of like that issue,
Yeah, there's a few things. I mean, one is really educate yourself. Like, when I post on social media and I can post about something to do with the show or something an achievement that I've had or something like that, I get hundreds of likes or whatever. When I post about trans youth, I get a handful. And I'm always curious about that. And I think that it's because people don't really understand the issue. So they'd rather not get involved or, I'd say, please educate yourself. Please find out the truth about what's going on for these kids. And, read and read things that are not propaganda, read the stuff that you can rely on for truth. And, and there's a lot of medical information out there that gives you that information. There's lots of organizations that you can go to, like Trevor Project and PFLAG and ACLU and all sorts of organizations that are on the front lines of helping these kids. But the mythology is that kids are getting surgeries. They're not. The mythology is that they're given irreversible treatments. They're not. That they're not being, what's the word? That they're not getting an examination in terms of like, they're not given a chance to actually get assessed. They are. Right. It takes months and months and months, if not years, to assess someone, whether or not they should transition or not. And with kids, it's social transition. It's cutting the hair. It's wearing different clothes, getting a different name, not even legally, just a nickname, all things that are reversible, that they're trying to make illegal. They're saying that puberty blockers, which are life-saving medicines, like literally life-saving. So they say at least 40% of trans youth attempt suicide in their life. And that's huge. And by not having access to puberty blockers, it's putting these kids at huge risk. Because just imagine yourself. I mean, we're talking about beauty, right? This is the context of our conversation in a sense. We look in the mirror, right, as adults, and let's say your gender identity aligns with your body, your expression. You're given a body that has the tools to express your gender in its truth. And you look in the mirror and you go, I hate this about myself. I hate that about myself, right? And then you work to try and fix it, or you try and work it out to see, why do I hate that? Is it because of social constraints? Is it what is going on? So we have resources as adults to figure that out. And we also have the resource, or I do now, but have the resource of being born in the quote unquote right body that expresses your truth. Imagine being a kid and looking in the mirror and seeing a costume, seeing something that does not reflect who you are at all. Like, and if let's say you're a woman and you identify as a woman, imagine having a male body and knowing that you're a woman. The agony, the profound pain that causes. It's indescribable, and it's impossible to understand that unless you've been through it. But, just imagine you're zipped up in a costume that you cannot take off. And everybody is seeing you as something other than you are. And so you can't perceive beauty. You don't have the tools to perceive beauty of yourself when you're in the wrong body. I'm saying wrong body in quotes,
I know.
It's the body that's not effective in expressing who you are. So puberty blockers stop kids from going through puberty and the gender that their anatomical gender, anatomical sex, right? So that they can hold off on going through puberty. And then when everybody's convinced that this is the right step, then they can go on the hormone that reflects their true gender, right? Or that's in alignment with their gender. It stops them from having to get unnecessary surgeries later. So if they're male, they're not going to develop breasts so that they don't have to have them removed. if they're female, they're not going to develop facial hair going through a male puberty. So, and other things. There's just, and if they, let's say they're assigned male at birth, but they're, really female, then they can go through a female puberty. They can develop breasts, they can develop hips, they can develop all of the things that a woman, that as a binary woman, is comfortable for them. So puberty blockers are extraordinarily important, and they're completely reversible. And they're saying that it's experimental, and it's not experimental. There's tons of evidence that this has been life-saving. So the experimental part is to deny them that when they know it's available. That's never.
Why is it so, why is it so threatening, do you think? Just because it's different than, or because it pushes the boundaries of those societal norms that we're told you're either this or this. Here's your choices. You're this. And it's that rigidity that.
There's so many reasons. I think that, I had the realization once, and I don't know how this occurred to me, but I was like, why is there this fixation on this, and I realized first of all, it's rooted in religion, that reproduction is reproduction, family life, all that kind of stuff, man, woman, procreation is really important, right? So they're mixing up gender with sex.
Right.
Okay. And then reproduction is binary. You need a sperm and an egg to create a child, right? So because reproduction is binary, they figure, well, sex is binary, therefore gender is binary. But what's happening is really, this is just people of trans experience have existed since the beginning of time. Gay people have existed since the beginning of time. This is natural diversity. Natural diversity. This happens naturally. So now there's a way to actually help those people, be a part of society in a healthy way and contribute and be who they are. And I think that is threatening. Look, it's not the people that are saying there's one religion, one right way to live. Those are not the people that are having a problem with this. It's the people that want to take away the freedoms of other people and how they should live, because there's only one way to do it, and it has to do with this sort of indoctrinated. And they're also buying into a dogma that is incorrect. They're buying into mythology around what it means to be a trans kid, and they're also mixing it up with sex. We can't talk about sex and kids. I mean, obviously, it's like, why would we talk about kids and sexuality? That's wrong. Well, this isn't sexuality. We're not talking about sexuality. We're talking about gender. So why is it that a kid who is who's assigned gender at birth aligns with their body, it's okay for them to know their gender, right? We say to a 2-year-old, are you a girl or boy? And they'll tell you, oh, I'm a girl, I'm a boy, right? It's okay for them to, at 2 years old, to know that.
Right.
Not, right? But it's not okay for someone who's misgendered at birth, right? Not assigned the correct gender at birth, misaligns with who they are. It's not okay for them to know. It's only if you're in alignment can you know. You can't know if you're not in alignment, which is completely bogus. It's not true. We know our truth. Kids know their truth. And we give them time. It's not like a kid just goes, I'm a boy, and we go, okay, here, take some boy clothes. It takes parents years to adjust to this. And they go and see experts, and there's doctors involved and psychologists and all that. It's not just random and whimsical. It's actually the WPATH, which is the organization that oversees therapists and doctors around transition. They have a standard of care. It's been around since the 60s, right? And it's been modified to get more as they've gotten more knowledge. But there's a standard of care as to how people need to treat trans youth and trans adults. It's not just random. There's an actual protocol. So I think people are scared. There's a culture of disrespecting science. It's become okay to disregard fact in certain areas of the States.
Yeah.
And to just react with emotion and mythology, and to invent things and then sell that. And we're talking about people's lives here, and it's got to be questioned.
Yeah.
I just laid a whole lot on you there.
No, I have a lot of, a very close friend of mine is going through this with her kids, and it's hard, and and you think, well, there are so many things available, and we're in a different space, and yet we're not in so many ways. And it's so, and you see the kids going through something so painful like this, and it's just, anyway, it's funny. I did a focus group a couple years ago, and I wanted to have some trans youth in the focus group. I could not. Nobody wanted to talk. They were too scared. They didn't want to talk. They didn't want to talk about it. I mean, I don't know if it was me, but they didn't want to. It was something. It's so, at that age, it's so, you're so vulnerable, and I just, I wish I could do more. I wish, I'm hopeful that as we continue next year with our workshops, our inclusivity can continue and grow. So, but anyway, thank you.
Well, you are doing, you are doing great things around this, and you're obviously providing support for your friend, and you're putting this conversation out there, and you're the one that initiated this and wasn't, curious. So you're doing a lot. I think people, ask me what people can do, they need to, educate themselves, right? But also think about supporting organizations that are doing important work, like Equality Federation and HRC and ACLU. And there's a lot of state organizations now that come under the Equality Federation that are doing work, like TENT, which is the Texas Educational Network, and other ones, Equality. They usually say Equality something with the state,
Right.
So those places are really doing a lot to a lot of lawsuits to, and interestingly, right now, this may change, hopefully it won't, most of these lawsuits are winning. So
Good.
there are some that are passing, unfortunately, but there are, a lot that are winning. But the way to make it happen is by supporting these organizations, because they need the resources to do all the lawsuits are exponential now. So they need the support. So, that's another way. And and just being out there, when you see someone with a post and they're talking about this stuff, like it, share it. That, you just never know who's going to see it that needs to see it.
Right.
Don't ignore it. Don't get, and if you're uncomfortable, which is totally understandable and natural around this topic, just do some digging. Just go, what is it? What's making me uncomfortable? Because we have, some introjects. We have swallowed some belief systems, myself included, all of us. If a certain age, you're going to be fed a certain, type of conversation around gender and sexuality. So, as it comes up, going, okay, what do I need to dig in about this? What questions do I need to ask myself to get more honest? And to be okay with that, and give yourself permission to feel uncomfortable, and then see what you can do to shift it. Have a lot of self-compassion with regards to this. The worst thing that we can do is go, I should feel a certain way, or I should be a certain way. And then the politically correct thing comes in, and then we begin to hate ourselves, and you just go, oh man, I'm one of those people. And, political correctness can be really obnoxious if it's not grounded and authentic and,
Right.
and integrated.
Yeah, I know that, I'm old. So for me, and having been indoctrinated into my whole, all of that feminine and masculine, it's
Right.
been, it's something that I've had to, that I've had to learn. I've my kids, so they've, and they've helped me tremendously, but it is something that you really have to, okay, wait, this has changed. Things are different. it's not the same as when I was growing up. Thank God. And yet, how do I learn, or how do I do this, or how do I make this different, or how do I help, or how do I try to shift this and make it better? So, but yeah.
If you come from a perspective of human contact and relationship rather than concept, of, and this is basic acting stuff too, right? Like we can't, if we play concept, we get into trouble as actors, we get in our
Right.
head, right? But if we play relationship, then we can be in contact. And it's the same in our lives. Like if I have an idea of how I'm supposed to be, it's not pleasant. But if I can get in contact with someone who makes me feel something that I can have connection to, that I have like not only a cognitive understanding of their situation, but an emotional understanding, some empathy, compassion, right? That will shift me. That's a shortcut. All I got to do is get to know you, hear your story, and suddenly that's education.
Right.
Right? That's why theater is so important. Film, TV, like quality storytelling is so important because it's a shortcut to understanding each other. And so that's another way that we can help each other and connect and get out of the, well, I should be better. I should be more understanding of this, or I shouldn't be so narrow-minded. Well, we're that way because we were taught to be that way.
Right. Right. Right.
It's not really our fault, but it is on us if we don't become aware of it. We let it lead us unknowingly, rather than, we shine our own light on it and go, okay, that's there. What do I need to do to, to shift this?
Yeah. Oh, you're so lovely. You really
Aw.
are.
So are you? If you weren't so old, I mean, my God, you're just so old. So old. Could be 80, 85, 90, I don't know, but
Oh, not that old. Not that that's wrong.
You're not, no,
Um,
you're not old.
No,
And what is old anyway?
I know.
I am wrestling with that.
Oh, believe me, that's a whole thing. That's a whole other thing. So I
Oh.
get it. Yeah, the old thing.
I know it's a huge part of this conversation around beauty, the whole aging thing.
Yep. Yeah. Thank you. I love it. I want to come back and I want to go back and listen to this and take notes, because I tried not to take I didn't take any notes, but everything you said, I said, oh my God, I have to write that down. I have to write that down. I have to look. I have to think about that. But really, it was really wonderful to talk to you and chat with you, and I might call you back again, or
Like I said, I could talk about this stuff for hours. As someone that was raised, they perceived me to be female when I wasn't, and having the burden of that socialization, right? It wasn't the correct socialization for me, but it also understanding what girls go through, who I observed who were in alignment with the sex assigned to them at birth, and the pressures on that. I was like this, tomboy, I guess they'd call it. I was butch. I was like, I had a lot of male energy, and that in and of itself had different, I was judged a certain way.
right.
It's different than when you're feminine, right? You've got different pressures. I couldn't compete. There's no way to even compete. I wasn't even in the running. I was just in this other category. So I understand it from a certain perspective, and what the pressures that girls and women have. It's kind of heartbreaking at times,
I know.
to that to buying into that stuff. But I do think it's changing, and it might not be changing as fast as we'd like, but it is changing, I think.
It is. Thanks to people like you
And
and
you,
me.
yeah, and you, exactly.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
all of us. Yeah.